I was at the boys club, and the boys club is like a place where there's a lot of video games and places to hang out for kids. And there's a casting director, her name was Mally Finn, and she came over and she said, can I talk to you? And I go, I'm sorry, I don't know. What did I do? And she goes, I would like you to try out for Terminator 2. Well, with me with my weird memory, she writes down my name, my address, and everything. And I'm on the way home with my aunt and uncle, Sean and Nancy. And I say, guess what? I'm going to try out for a movie. They go, what movie? Nightmare on Elm Street 6, I think. I go on the first interview, and I worked with the casting director and everything, and that went pretty well. I got on the finalist, and the second one was with Linda Hamilton and James Cameron, so that didn't go too well because I was a little nervous about meeting them. And then the third interview was after they gave me a chance to work with a dialogue coach for 4 hours a day, so I finally went on my third interview, and Jim told me he was going to tell me Friday, except he came out and he said, I would like you to do this movie. And I'm like, oh my God. And I get in the car and I'm like, yeah, and that's the story.
Okay. Now, with this film, were there ever any days when you felt overwhelmed that you'd wake up in the morning?
Usually just between sort of day 1 and day 100, just in that part. Yeah, the whole movie, every day. It was a big project.
Now, I have a real interest in footage that does not wind up in the final version of a movie. Mm-hmm. Now, in one of the trailers for this film,
we see Michael Biehn.
Yes.
Yeah.
What happened with that?
Michael came in for 1 day's shooting on the film, and it was a dream sequence. And I felt that I wanted to see him in the film. I wanted to have his kind of good luck charm, if you will, in the movie. And it was a dream that Sarah has where she. There is a similar dream in the movie, but there were actually 2 in the script. An earlier one that was kind of a precursor to it. And when we cut the film together, it was much more powerful with it out, where you just see the second dream. And so, that was, Michael unfortunately is one of the casualties of the editing process. But I hope that he understands. I haven't spoken to him about it. But, it wasn't like he worked for 10 weeks on the picture and got cut out, which has happened to people that I know.
Now, let's go back to the first Terminator for a minute. Now, this film, a lot's been written about the large budget. Mm-hmm. Now, the first one, was there a lot of pressure when they were making the movie to bring it in on budget, on time, and how did that affect the folks making the movie?
My impression, and I don't really know the truth of what was going on behind the scenes, was that it was much more tense making the first one. Even being a low-budget picture, they were all over us about, not shooting one more scene in this future sequence because we were running over and blah, blah, blah. This one, if there was that kind of dialogue going on, it was going on off the set. Obviously, we were all struggling to get the job done because it was an enormous job, but we didn't feel it it did not impact nearly as much on the set.
Okay. On the first film, when you found out that Arnold was going to be your co-star, mm-hmm. was there any hesitancy or reluctancy on your part because he wasn't really known as being an actor?
Yes. I think I was inclined not to take it as seriously when I found out it was Arnold. Up to then, he hadn't done, any significant acting work. I hate to be snobby, but, it was hard to relate to the vehicle as anything that was really important. And I didn't realize how good it was until it was done.
And with this film, with a budget so large and so many effects, were you ever scared that the effects might overwhelm the story?
No, I think that the effects that we have in Terminator are adding to the story. In order to really sell the story of Terminator 2, it is such a wild story. And the Terminators can do so many different things, and the chase scenes and all this stuff, that if you don't have the special effects, you would not be able to do this film. So it is, in fact, it is the special effects and the stunts and the outrageousness of what you see on the screen that sells actually the story and what makes it then successful.
What was when you first met Arnold? When I met him for the first time, I was a little bit kind of psyched out. How did you prepare for that, and how did that meeting go?
I was like getting prepared, but I didn't do a good job because I shook his hand, like, but I went like this, and Arnold's standing there like this, and I go, "What?" And he goes, "Shake it harder," and I go, "Okay." I shake it really hard. So later in the movie, I've been shaking hands with him.
Okay. Now, doing big budget movies, do you feel yourself that you're almost caught up in each film has to be bigger now, or do you look forward to doing films little smaller budgets?
I allowed myself to go for the epic in this film because I know already what my next film is, and my next film is a small drama. So I know that as a director, I'll have a balanced slate. Yeah, sure. I think when you're dealing with a sequel, especially, there's a definite need to kind of surpass what you did the first time, to give the audience more. But then on the other hand, you've got to be careful that you don't get into the more is more syndrome, because more isn't necessarily more isn't necessarily better.
Linda, every movie has scenes that are cut out. Now, I read you have a twin sister, and you shot a scene where they brought her aboard. Well, can you tell me about that and your sister's reaction to movie making?
Yeah, I think that it opened her eyes quite a bit. She had a hard job to do, came in really only for 3 days, and then came in later, a few months later, to do a day's work. But she's made it into the movie, she's there. And actually my agent and manager thought she was the one in the front rather than the one behind, so nobody knows how she, how she was used. In the steel mill at the end, when there are 2 Sarah Connors, she plays one. They were planning on doing it with process, but I'm lucky enough to have a twin.
Now, there's another scene where you were taking a microchip out of the head. Now, what happened with that scene? Weren't they going to try something fancy with that?
That was fancy. It was great. I admire Jim for being able to take such a good shot out of the film. It just didn't serve the film time-wise. There was a whole sequence that was taken out where we performed surgery, and she played the mirror image of me. So it looks like we're shooting into a mirror, but it's actually my sister and I doing the duplicate movements.
What was the most impressive scene for you when you were watching it being filmed? Was there ever like a scene that you were scared, or you just kind of sat back and go, "Whoa, this is really impressive"?
There's a scene in the movie when the truck goes over the bridge of a bridge, and the canal chase scene, and that was the one that I thought was the most spectacular stunt I have ever seen, because I saw that in real life. I was there on the set watching it.
With secrecy on a movie, because this movie has a lot of advanced publicity, people wanting to know about it. Now, what kind of measures do you go through beforehand to make sure that word doesn't leak out about the movie or the script stays secret?
I'm very careful about the script. Copies are issued to people who are working on the film already hired, and in the process of being hired, they sign an agreement that says they can't disclose the materials, and so on. So it's handled in a kind of a top security way, so that the script isn't for sale down at the Hollywood Book and Poster Store, a week after we start production.
No, what's this about a paper shredder? Was that any?
Oh, that's just a joke. Actually, as a joke, they gave me a paper shredder as a present, I think, for my birthday or at Christmas. Okay. But yeah, I mean, we are careful. We're careful with our documents, and there are a lot of people that want to know what you're doing when you're a high-profile project, and I just didn't want everybody knowing the plot of the movie. I want them to go and discover it. We've given out certain information that we do want people to know, that Arnold is the hero and not the bad guy this time, and things like that I think are important.
Well, what was the weirdest reaction you got from someone on the street?
Well, I actually just told somebody this story, but I was in Chicago, and I think the movie had been out for 3 days, and I really found this fascinating. I was walking on some famous street there, and I just auditioned. I read for this director for this other movie, and I'm walking down the street, and I really looked still like the Terminator character, and I was really thin, and I had a real short haircut, and I'm walking down the street, and all of a sudden this businessman, it's like the height of lunch hour in Chicago, this businessman, they like this Mercedes car, like turned around, like U-turned and like curb parked it, and they're all going, "No, the Terminator!" And these were business guys, and I'm going like, "Wow, man, this is pretty wild."
I've also had a big interest in how people react to actors on the street and how they identify with the characters.
Yeah.
Now, after the first Terminator film, did you find that you'd meet men and they'd have some kind of instinct to protect you? Or how did men react to you in the street?
No, nobody wants to protect me.
Yeah.
I think I look like I can handle my own. No, but people did respond to the character. and everyone thought they were being very clever by saying, "Oh, you Sarah Connor." You know, every single man in the world thought that this was their own line. No one had ever said it to me. It's very funny.